Welcome back, my friends. Last we left off, the Fourth Umbral Calamity, also known as the Calamity of Earth, had just begun. The Ascians, of course, incentivized it, but the cause was the combined madness of the scientist Amon and the recreated Emperor Xande. As the third reflection ended, all of its souls and power rushed to rejoin the source, causing the Calamity to create massive earthquakes and tremors to happen all over the world. Parts of the planet that didn't have a strong foundation broke apart easily, engulfing entire towns and some cities beneath the Earth's surface. This is the reason many Allagan structures are trapped or sunk beneath the ground. The quakes ruined and demolished so much, with only the tallest and strongest Allagan buildings remaining today. Like most calamities, only a handful of civilizations survived the earthquakes. Technically, the Allagans were among these survivors, but the horrors of their arrogance were only just beginning. With the Crystal Tower devoured by the Earth and the many crystal generators gone or destroyed, their primary means of generating renewable energy was gone. Machinery began to run out of power, communication and transportation devices stopped functioning, and even the street lights began to shimmer before going dark, never to shine again. This threw the remains of the Allagan Empire into absolute chaos. The chain of command was broken as anarchy and hysteria took root in the hearts of the people. There are records of what the races of man resorted to during these dark days, reminding us all what the desperate will resort to when they feel they have no choice. Not even the floating labs of Ozzy were spared. It's true that floating structures like Ozzy were able to avoid the quakes of the Fourth Calamity. However, this facility and the people upon it still required valuable resources that were being supplied from the mainland. With these resources running dry and eventually cut off, all power in Ozzy was automatically diverted to maintaining and keeping the most powerful entities they had contained under control. This meant that other caged creatures that weren't seen as priority by the lab's AI steadily begun to break free. The chimeras and biological weapons that these labs had created were now completely untamed and began to butcher their creators. With their only methods of escape either destroyed or gone, the remaining staff in Ozzy slowly died out, either starving to death in whatever hole they'd chosen to hide in, or killed by their own creations. But not everyone had lost their minds and lives to the Empire's fall and the Calamity's ruin. One such person was Princess Selena. She was one of the last surviving descendants of the original Emperor Xande. When Amon recreated the Emperor, the Mad Tyrant killed many of royal blood to deny them any right to the throne and make his dominion absolute. Princess Selena not only survived his murderous gaze, but also emerged from the Calamity unscathed. In her wisdom, she knew that the real threat wasn't dead. The Crystal Tower was sunk, not destroyed, meaning the Mad Emperor and Amon would survive to cause further ruin in the far-flung future. She knew she wouldn't be alive to stop them when this occurred, and she didn't know if she could trust her own descendants to not make the same mistakes her ancestors did. So instead, she entrusted the future to a friend. Through what little biotechnology remained active, she gave up her own blood and genetically infused it into her ally. By giving the blood of Allagan royalty to her confidant, their children would carry it into the future. And by not knowing the true power they possessed, their intentions would remain pure. This genetic trait would come to be known as the Allagan Eye, and the descendants of Princess Selena's ally would become known as Seeker of the Sun Makote from the G tribe. The one who ultimately fulfilled the will of this ancient princess was a Makote named Grahatia. Not only that, but two other descendants of the original emperor also sought to protect the future. These two were known as Doga and Une. You see, Amon had used Doga and Une in his research to perfect the second coming of Xande. Originally, the both of them had been looking forward to seeing their ancestor return to them, but the Emperor Xande they met was hateful and insane. During the last days of the Allegan Empire, Doga and Une marched to the Crystal Tower to try and stop Xande on their own. However, in case their bodies failed them, they used their magic to move their spirits into a pair of clones that Amon had made during his research. Their strength of will kept them moving forward even without their essence, but ultimately they failed, and the Crystal Tower sunk. Although, their foresight was rewarded. As the Crystal Tower re-emerged, so too did the pair of clones bearing the spirits of Doga and Une. 5,000 years later, in the 7th Astral Era, the clones of Doga and Une, together with G'raha Tia, bearer of the princess's wish, along with numerous adventurers, finally put an end to Emperor Xande and the crazed scientist Amon. The ruinous desires that ended an empire had finally been put to the sword and would not bleed into our lifetime. But as miraculous as their foresight was, not the princess, Doga, or Une was going to prevent what happened next. They made their preparations during the Fourth Umbral Era, but eventually things calmed down, and this led to the Fourth Astral Era. This was a time of regression, and one that would make any who fancies themselves an intellectual weep at what was about to happen. Those who survived the Calamity were made fanatics by the destruction of everything they knew. They blamed the Calamity on their hubris, arrogance, and sloth, which was true. However, instead of learning the lessons of moderation and hard work, they blamed knowledge in its entirety. The Fourth Astral Era is called the Fall of Civilization for a reason. People preached about the evils of higher learning and how it only brings about destruction. This caused paranoia, leading people to destroy and forbid knowledge in all forms. Books were burned, parents refused to teach their children how to read and write, and what few Allegan wonders survived the Calamity were beaten, broken, and destroyed. Those with any common sense or intelligence that tried to stop this madness were hunted down like animals and killed if they didn't escape the mobs. Society had essentially reverted back to the Second Astral Era, a time of God-fearing lunatics. The only records and devices used by the Allegan Empire we have today are the ones these maniacs couldn't reach or find. Everything else was destroyed beyond use. This campaign against knowledge and advancement went on for about 1,500 years. In that time, many churches and religions re-emerged, just like in the Second Astral Era. But because of this stifling of knowledge, little to nothing is known about how the people lived or what happened during the Fourth Astral Era. The only thing we know for certain is how the churches attempted to control the illiterate masses through the word of God. However, eventually these religious leaders went about creating their own alphabet, and only those sworn to the service of the divine were allowed to learn these holy letters. It's ironic, because this alphabet eventually evolved into the Eorzean script we use today. Everyone knows the alphabet now, and we use it to both teach and learn, in spite of its origin. Aside from that, we can reasonably assume societies went back to a sort of religious tribal mentality. People only knew what they needed to perform whatever job they had, which, as you can guess, wasn't much. If there were any societies or small villages of mages and intellectuals that survived the mobs of this time, they kept themselves well hidden, since there's no official record of them existing. I wish I had more to say on the Fourth Astral Era, but there is nothing. The people of this time kept no records or documents explaining their day-to-day. In fact, no one knows exactly what sparked the next calamity. But like all the calamities prior, we can confidently blame the Ascians for the mass murder and innocent lives paid to bring it about. All that is known is that winter came early one year, across the entire world. Indeed, the entirety of the world had entered into the fifth Umbral Calamity. During this blank era of regression, the Ascians had still made certain that the sixth's reflection ended in screams. As its energies made its way back to the source, the Calamity of Ice had begun. Hello everyone! Thanks for staying to the end of the lesson. If you enjoyed this and want to see more, subscribe and like this video to let me know I'm doing well. If there is a topic you'd want me to cover in the future, leave a comment about it and I'll see what I can do. Until next we meet, I'll be researching even more of our world's rich lore to share with you. Till then, stay safe my friends.